When I say the words Chuck E. Cheese's, if you aren't thinking of the pizzeria, what are you thinking of? Probably the games, or the food, or the animatronics. For decades, Chuck E. Cheese was the pinnacle of childhood joy and birthday parties. But one indie horror game turned it into a symbol of fear and regret for the entire robot entertainment empire. This is how Five Nights at Freddy's killed Chuck E. Cheese. In the late 1970s, a man, an entrepreneur, the father of Atari, Nolan Bushnell, had an idea. One that would change the average dining experience forever and ever. Or so they thought. Arcades and pizzerias were popular on their own right, but the idea went a little something like this. What if you took the fun of an arcade, the endless money it would generate, and a diner, so the kids would have something to do while they waited for their food. And for the adults, robots. A show like no other. The story of the rat himself began with a surprising twist. Originally, they actually wanted a coyote, but a little mix-up with a costume manufacturer sent them a giant rat suit. Eventually, Coyote Pizza was turned into Chuck E. Cheese Pizza Time Theater, and upon opening, it was making immediate headlines with its robot show. Inspired by Disney attractions, Bushnell envisioned a restaurant where animatronics would be entertainment as music, and the families would finish their pizza and played games. This idea, of course, took off. However, this video isn't about Chuck E. Cheese, it's about FNAF. So let's jump over a few years later to the year 2014. Copypastas and the latest memes are bustling throughout the internet. This was a very pivotal year for Chuck E. Cheese, and not in a good way. Before FNAF, Scott Cawthon was making small, family-friendly religious games, such as The Pilgrim's Progress and Chipper & Sons Lumber Company. His style often featured cartoonish characters with robotic movements. Players of these games would commonly refer to them as creepy and robotic, one reviewer comparing them to a horror movie. Scott was devastated. He was already struggling with doubts about his new game dev career and considered quitting entirely. Instead of giving up, however, he had an idea. Taking inspiration from places like Showbiz Pizza and Chuck E. Cheese, he conceptualized a game where animatronics would try and hunt you down. Mr. Cawthon drew his experience of 3D modeling to design animatronics that were both realistic and uncanny. Characters like Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie the Bunny, Chica the Chicken, and Foxy the Pirate Fox were intentionally designed to evoke nostalgia for animatronic mascots from places like Chuck E. Cheese. Scott eventually released FNAF on indie game platforms, and it exploded into popularity thanks to YouTubers like Markiplier and PewDiePie, who shared their scared reactions to the game. Markiplier even dubbing himself the king of Five Nights at Freddy's. Theorists would begin tying the events from the game to real-life murders and began calling places to ask about the game, which caused some bad situations for Scott.
December 1993, Aurora, Colorado. 10 p.m. Tuesday night at a local Chuck E. Cheese. After a family birthday party runs long, manager Margaret Kohlberg and teenage employees Sylvia Crowell, Ben Grant, Colleen O'Connor, and Bobby Stevens. At 10:05, he left the bathroom, pulled out a small caliber handgun, and proceeded to execute everyone in the building. First Sylvia, then Ben, then Colleen. Dunlap then moved to the kitchen, where he surprised Bobby Stevens. The bullet entered Bobby's jaw, sending him sprawling onto the ground. Then finally, Nathan moved to the back, The Office, where Margaret opened the safe before Nathan shot her twice, proceeded to grab her bag, filling it with $1,600 in cash, arcade tokens, and keychains.
Animatronics were costly to repair, and children who now know about Five Nights at Freddy's and who once loved the shows now despised the animatronics because of how scary they thought they were. By the rise of digital entertainment and home gaming consoles, Chuck E. Cheese and other arcades were being ruined, not to mention the success of Five Nights at Freddy's bringing it down. Eventually, the characters went from nostalgic icons to fearful nightmares. Here's a short story for you. My brother and I stopped going to Chuck E. Cheese after I told him that Chuck E. Cheese was a bloodthirsty animatronic. And I told my mom the same thing. We never went back. God, I was a bully. Ugh. Anyway, in the end, lots of families, including my own, were avoiding Chuck E. Cheese out of fear. And so, by the late 2010s, Chuck E. Cheese began to phase out animatronics at certain locations and announced a 2.0 redesign in 2017. Chuck E. Cheese and his animatronic friends were to be removed and dismantled so nobody could steal the characters to restore them. Digital screens replaced mechanical shows featuring the high-energy animated performances of Chucky and his friends. Eventually, the world of Chuck E. Cheese was dying, as in 2020, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Well, the parent company of Chuck E. Cheese has filed for bankruptcy. CEC Entertainment is blaming the financial strain caused by the global pandemic. Nearly half of its more than 500 Chuck E. Cheese locations are now open, and they plan to reopen more locations weekly. The company employs over 16,000 people. Employees' pay won't be disrupted in any way, and they will continue to receive benefits during the process.
Chapter 11 bankruptcy allows a company to restructure its debts while continuing to operate its business. The pandemic was a big player in this bankruptcy, as it forced the temporary closure for every single CEC location, as it severely impacted their revenue. Families were avoiding in-person dining and entertainment, and the company just couldn't keep up with rent and operational costs. Even before the pandemic, CEC Entertainment was already struggling with declining foot traffic in their locations, rising debt, and outdated business models that failed to compete with modern family entertainment options. So, they had an idea. By December 2020, CEC Entertainment had successfully emerged from bankruptcy after reducing its debt by $705 million and securing new equity investments. In present day, not much has really changed besides 5 legacy locations to keep their animatronic bands. And for the kids, Chuck E. Cheese definitely lowered their age range and added a trampoline zone and a new fun zone to replace the sky tubes. At the same time, Five Nights at Freddy's has also been trying to distance itself from Chuck E. Cheese, with its animatronic band looking further and further less like Chucky and his band. In my opinion, I really like the way that 2.0 came out. It saved Chuck E. Cheese from a life of debt and constant reminders of an old, horrific era that will torture them forever. To this day, corporate likes to interact with their fans and ask what they would like to see with the company, which is amazing. While Chuck E. Cheese may not be as big as before, it's better than being gone completely and becoming forgotten. I stand at a completely unbiased standpoint. With people who do like animatronics, nostalgic over a different time, I do understand. However, I feel like if Five Nights at Freddy's didn't exist, Chuck E. Cheese most likely wouldn't have gone through this 2.0 change. But in the end, it was a necessary thing. A very, very necessary thing. I do know that they did try the Five Nights at Fun thing to, I guess, copy the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Honestly, I think that's just them trying to market more towards Five Nights at Freddy's, like, players and say that we're not scary. before this video ends, I'm going to tell you guys a little story from when I personally worked at Chuck E. Cheese's. So what happened was, there was a kid, he came up to me and he was like he was like keeping his distance. He was like, that guy looks like is he the night guard like in Five Nights at Freddy's? And he came up to me and he asked that question. He was like, are you the night guard? And I said, yes, but I want to tell you something, buddy. Freddy Fazbear, he's not a nice guy, but Chuck E. Cheese, he's awesome. We spend all night playing games. And he ran away happy. That is how I've always imagined fixing this everlasting issue of having to deal with things like that. Having to deal with a constant reminder that's forever going to be there. Unfortunately, we can't get rid of Five Nights at Freddy's and we can't get rid of Chuck E. Cheese's. But if they coexisted, we could perhaps find a balance in making sure that at the end of the day, Five Nights at Freddy's is a fake thing, and Chuck E. Cheese's is a really cool place if you have the heart. Anyway, if you have a different standpoint on this, though, feel free to leave a comment feel free to leave a comment down below. Chuck E. Cheese may not be what it once was at some point in time. However, change is always what keeps us going. Thank you for watching today's video. My name is Dowoge, and I will see you when I see ya. Good night, everybody.